you.
Some breaking news now in Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation. His first sentencing just happened for a member of the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos, a former foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign. He pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI when the Russia conspiracy started. Papadopoulos was once called an excellent guy by then candidate Trump, but as President Trump today denied ever knowing him. Papadopoulos had a seat at Trump's national security table during the campaign, as you might recall. But when Mueller's criminal charges came down last year, he was dismissed as even a coffee boy by some Trump officials. I spoke exclusively with Papadopoulos just before today's hearing. I'll have the first interview with him in just a moment. But first, let's go to CNN's Sarah Murray outside the courthouse. And Sarah, George Papadopoulos, the sentence has come down. What was it?
That's right. The judge sentenced George Papadopoulos to 14 days in prison. He is also facing a fine. This coming after Papadopoulos expressed some regret for lying to investigators, and his attorney in court cast his client as a naive fool. George Papadopoulos, the former foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign, is now the first member of the president's team to be sentenced as part of the Russia investigation. The historic distinction far from the national impact the 31-year-old had hoped to have. According to the sentencing memo from Papadopoulos' lawyers, he misled investigators to save his professional aspirations and preserve a perhaps misguided loyalty to his master. That master and the administration quick to dismiss the former foreign policy advisor's role.
It was a volunteer position, and again, no activity was ever done in an official capacity.
I have no idea why people would think that a volunteer coffee boy like George Papadopoulos would get to the top of this campaign.
It was Papadopoulos who revealed to a diplomat that he had been told the Russians had thousands of emails about Hillary Clinton. That helped set off an FBI investigation that eventually became Robert Mueller's special counsel probe. During the 2016 campaign, the young advisor attended a meeting of Trump's new national security team, including Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions. Papadopoulos pitched a meeting between then-candidate Trump and Russian President Papadopoulos, who revealed to a diplomat that he had been told the Russians had thousands of emails about Hillary Clinton. That helped set off an FBI investigation that eventually became Robert Mueller's special counsel probe. During the 2016 campaign, the young advisor attended a meeting of Trump's new national security team, including Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions. Papadopoulos pitched a meeting between then-candidate Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. When the FBI asked him about his Kremlin-linked contacts seeking to meddle in the presidential election,
What Papadopoulos did was lie, and that's on him, not on the campaign, and we can't speak for that.
in court documents, the defense pleaded his ignorance. To say George was out of his depth would be a gross understating. His wife got even more technical.
He didn't lie because of the nature of his relationship with Russia, because he didn't have any relationship with Russia. He lied about the date.
But the prosecution says Papadopoulos was not just a nervous novice, but an uncooperative one. The defendant did not provide substantial assistance, and much of the information provided by the defendant came only after the government confronted him. Now, the government wanted to use George Papadopoulos as an example of what happens when people lie to investigators. They had asked that he go to prison for 6 months. Obviously, the judge deciding that a 2-week sentence would fit the bill. Jake.
All right, Sarah Murray outside the courthouse. Until now, Papadopoulos has not done any interviews, but I spoke with him exclusively in his first interview, and while he maintains he does not remember telling anyone on the Trump campaign that he was told that the Russians had Hillary Clinton's emails, he also left open the possibility that maybe he did. There are going to be people out there who think there's no way George Papadopoulos didn't tell anyone on the campaign. Did you tell anyone on the campaign?
As far as I remember, I absolutely did not.
You didn't tell Corey Lewandowski?
As far as I remember, I absolutely did not share this information with anyone on the campaign.
Not Sam Clovis?
Anyone.
Dearborn?
Anyone.
Mashburn?
Anyone.
Waleed Ferris? None of them.
I might have, but I have no recollection of doing so. I can't guarantee it. All I can say is my memory is telling me that I never shared it with anyone on the campaign.
Papadopoulos also contradicted the sworn testimony.
Anyone.
Waleed Ferris? None of them.
I might have, but I have no recollection of doing so. I can't guarantee it. All I can say is my memory is telling me that I never shared it with anyone on the campaign.
Papadopoulos also contradicted the sworn testimony of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The former Trump campaign advisor claimed that Sessions and then candidate Trump both seemed to support his idea of setting up a meeting between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Take a listen. When did you first meet Donald Trump?
March 31st at the national security meeting.
There's a photo of you at the table. Candidate Trump is there. Senator Jeff Sessions is there. What was discussed at that meeting in terms of Russia, in terms of meeting with Putin?
As far as I remember, it was I who brought up anything regarding Russia. I was under the impression that an individual I had met in Rome, the so-called professor, was able to provide high-level connections in Russia that would result in some sort of summit or meeting, mostly for a photo op. So I sat down and I looked at candidate Trump directly in his eyes and said, I can do this for you if it's in your interest and if it's in the campaign's interest. And the collective energy in the room, of course there were some dissenters, but the collective energy in thinking.
Senator Jeff Sessions was there too.
Yes.
At the table. What was his response?
My recollection was that the senator was actually enthusiastic about a meeting between the candidate and President Putin.
So you say that then Senator, now Attorney General Sessions, was enthusiastic about the idea of candidate Trump meeting Putin, but he has said the exact opposite. He says, he testified before Congress saying that he, quote, pushed back when you raised the possibility of a meeting with Russia. That's not true, you're saying?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember him pushing back?
No.
You remember him saying this is a good idea?
I remember him being enthusiastic about a potential meeting between the candidate and President Putin after I raised the question.
Sessions released a statement today through his lawyer telling CNN, quote, Attorney General Sessions has publicly testified under oath about his recollection of this meeting, and he stands by his testimony. We're going to have much more from that interview throughout the rest of the day on CNN, and we're going to have a special report on George Papadopoulos at 11 p.m. Eastern this evening, a documentary about him. But let's talk about this with the panel. First of all, Papadopoulos can't guarantee that he didn't tell anybody from the...
He has a different recollection of a very important meeting than the Attorney General when he testified before Congress. And we'll see, does Mueller now go down that road and do something about Jeff Sessions? Does he charge him with perjury?
Or has he already, and we don't know about it?
Maybe. But I will say the fact that the judge was not convinced of the prosecution's argument that he should get a severe sentence, that's... we talk about this case sometimes in wins and losses for Mueller. Mm-hmm. Don't we have to see this as a loss for Mueller? They wanted something on the side of 6 months.
6 months, up to 6 months.
They only gave him 14 days.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
The judge, in my understanding of the sentencing, was Papadopoulos said, "Look, I may have done something stupid, but they tried to make me into this, foreign policy expert. I really didn't know what I was doing. I made a mistake. I lied." Whereas the prosecution said, "This thwarted our investigation. He should get 6 months." So the judge sided with Papadopoulos at the sentencing.
The judge
today.
seemed to buy the argument that he was a naive fool.
Yeah.
And not no, I'm serious, and not an uncooperative mastermind, or
there you
at
go.
least a schemer.
But my thing is, he didn't need to be a mastermind nor a fool to lie to the FBI. He lied to the FBI, and they are sending a signal that if you lie to the FBI, you can do 2 weeks in jail and be on probation for a year and walk free. There are people that have done far less, that have served time for much more. This is part of the problem folks have with the criminal justice system. To the point in Papadopoulos' interview, it's not every day the Russians come knocking, y'all. Like, it's really not every day a foreign entity comes tra-la-la over to you saying, I've got information about your boss's opponent in this presidential race. Yeah. I am hard-pressed to believe that he does not remember if he shared information with someone else on that information about your boss's opponent in this presidential race. Yeah. I am hard-pressed to believe that he does not remember if he shared information with someone else on that.
Bill, let me ask you, who do you believe, Jeff Sessions or George Papadopoulos, about that meeting in March 2016? Papadopoulos says he wants to set up this meeting between Trump and Putin, give him some foreign policy credentials. Papadopoulos says Sessions was enthusiastic. Sessions says the exact opposite, that he pushed back on it. Who do you believe?
I really don't know. I mean, you have a meeting with 12 people, and it's some guy you barely know, and you're running the meeting, and he says, maybe you humor him. I mean, setting up a meeting wouldn't necessarily, of course, prove anything, right?
No,
no. People have met with foreign leaders as candidates before and so forth. So I don't know that that's the I don't know. That strikes me as less important than the fact that, yes, I sort of agree with you. Is it really credible that he was told about real interesting information on Hillary Clinton and just kept that to himself?
Well, what do you think? Is it credible to you? Do you believe him when he says he doesn't remember telling anybody on the campaign? You know, there is a guy named John Mashburn who told, according to the New York Times, he was on the campaign. He told the Senate Judiciary Committee earlier this year that he remembered an email coming to the campaign from Papadopoulos saying that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. Nobody can find that email.
I was gonna say, I'd love to see the email.
No, nobody can find it, but Mashburn has testified to that to the Senate Judiciary Committee.
We have a lot of people involved in this who really don't tell the truth, so it is hard to know who to believe. But let's not forget, Sessions did have to go back to the committee and clarify something he said because of his first testimony. And you're going to forgive me because I can't remember exactly what the details.
It was about whether or not he met with any Russians.
Yes, thank you, Jake.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had to go and clear that up. So it wouldn't be the first time that Sessions maybe didn't hit the truth.